Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. This directly follows on from the bird's eye view of the quadro geometry for the domes. I'm going to be doing this cold, so therefore no practice, no setup. We're starting with a blank page. So, if I make the mistakes, you will probably never see them because I'll delete this video. First of all, we can start out with a 1 meter. This is somewhat different, similar enough that it's quite recognizable, but a little bit different nonetheless. So we start out with a 1 meter by 1 meter square. I know that we need a 2 meter by 2 meter square or rectangle, but for the moment all I want to do is just to keep everything similar to our other modeling methods, two modeling methods. So now I create an arc with 4 sides in the red direction. I come up 1 meter and then scribe down to this point. Note that straight away the option for 4 sides didn't work, so what have I done wrong? Well, we undo that, hit the arc tool, hit 4 sides, so we should have locked it into 4. We want to, in the red direction, I pull up and type in 1 meter and arc down, and this time we've achieved the end result that we wanted. I was a bit worried that it wasn't going to work. I can come across there and create that surface. We know that we'll need this measurement and this measurement for our shape, but where they generate the lines isn't along the 1 meter increment that we're wanting. It's actually, I was going to say it's out here, the measurement, but do you recall in that other video, if you have watched it, that I said the shape has to be generated along the diagonal? Okay, so I'm doing this the simple way first. I can scale it. But how do you make sure you only go to the corner? Well, down in the bottom hand we've got 141. If I type in 1.414 and hit enter, it's not quite right. So that's interesting in itself. Is it dropped? No, it has actually dropped back. So scale, type in 1.414 and bingo, we've got it. Now I don't think that's as accurate as you can get. And if I keep on zooming in, there we go. The measurement tools within SketchUp are often to the closest decimal point or a grid line, and you don't get accurate or the outcome that you may wish. There is a difference between precise and accurate, and I want them to be both. So I didn't know that was going to happen, but I, from prior experience, kind of felt that that's what would wind up happening. So I'm going to delete that, and this is the process that I use. I make my line diagonal. If I measure that, that would be probably 1414, but we know that it leaves some change on the table and not enough distance is actually given to. This will go right to the corner, but the measurement won't. Okay, anyway, carrying on. Now I rotate that round to that point, and now I can create my arc from there back up to this point. Put my line in and up, and it will create a surface. Now that gives me the positioning that I need for these lines. That they're not exactly where we want them just yet, you'll have to accept, but I'm just going to, for the now, drop them down. Oops, getting a bit sticky. And drop them down to this point. They will become necessary to know when we go to do the dome. This point, of course, is retained like we have in other methods for creating the point of the flush and plane lines. So what do we have to do next? Well, we've got to get it gets a wee bit tricky. We've got to have the lines to create the transition to the leg, and from the normally we would have the line come up at midway, but we've already determined that that's not the way we have to do it, or for the quad geometry dome. I paused the video there for a moment because I had to do a wee bit of thinking. So I have actually cheated a little bit. This is not as cold as I'd want it to be, but as I said, this is because it is effectively cold. I don't know what's going to come next necessarily. I had to do a wee bit of a think. So what I did here was I created an arc from here to here. Of course, that gives us our intersection at the point, well, it should intersect. Whoops. At that point, it should be no discrepancy whatsoever. No, so that's quite accurate. And what I did then was I took a grid line from this intersecting point, and we know that if you watched the measurement there, it's 459. It's very close to our 461, only 2 mils difference. So it could be that somewhere around my original creation of the dome, I was slightly out. And now, as I'm basing it entirely upon the geometry of the four-sided arc, it may be that this is indeed the correct position. Now, these lines effectively give us our grid. So we've got the measurement there, as I was saying, 459. It's not centre to the 1 metre square area, but it will be, however, the height that we need for our, or the position for the line for our dome. So I'm just going to scribe it up there, 2 metres for the, it's not that, this is not the position. So if I take this line and this line, which I'm going to do right now, there we go. We have, for some reason, see how that's not selecting? Let's hide that. Is it a full? No, it's not, is it? Okay, so I'll get rid of this line, delete, and put a new line up. And again, in the vertical line, I'm going to go 2 meters, and I'm going to rotate these round to the other side. And hide. Now what does that give us? Well, these 2 points here will give us our top triangle. So let's draw that in. It's step 1, but we now need the points here and the height for this, which is what? Well, there's a jolly good question. But let's now draw these two lines in. At least I can do that. Two meters, and enter. Same thing. 2 meters, and there we go. We still haven't got the intersecting points here, and that's what we may need to have a think of, how we generate them before we go much further. So I'm going to pause it again, as I'm now conceding, not quite as cold. This is the point. I did not have this as a practiced exercise, so hesitations and stoppages. And back again, and let's see whether I can get this version to work for me. Did you see my car underneath there? Okay, so what we need to do here now is to create an arc from this point here down to the end of the dome, corner of the dome, and that gives us our intersection point. I create an arc from here back up if I wish. Gives us our intersection points. I can now go to that point, go to that point, back down, back up, and I've got my, oops, don't select everything, David. I've got my leg there. I can delete that arc. So we've got two of the surfaces. We can draw in a line here, so now we have to find how to get the height of that line. In the process of doing this, I wanted to try and keep the proportions of the upper triangle and the lower triangle of the hexagon as even as possible. And that is why I needed to draw this line over slightly, and we just happen to be using, the, as I said, the geometry of the approach to achieve these points. I just have to remember how I did it. Yeah, it's kind of funny, or not. Right, I'm going to pause it again, and I'll be back very shortly. Well, it may not be as difficult as I thought. Because this was generated via the lines penetrating the very smooth dome representation, creating an arc from this point down to this point gives our position here because it will bisect it. So now at that point of bisection or intersection, I can create the next surface. Now what I'm picking up is that the accuracy of this may be a little bit suspect. It looks pretty good at the moment because I was getting a different symbol as generated by SketchUp than I was anticipating. Nonetheless, we'll carry on as if everything was perfect, and now I can do the upper surface, create group. I can come through here and create this one and the lower one. And because I have removed this line or arc, rotate that round, that gives us our point there. and we've got the surfaces. Now that's actually I quite like that approach, if it's worked, because we won't know until I move it out of the way, spin them around and join them all up. But I actually think that's quite an efficient, elegant way of drawing a dome. Move it back 5 meters, for instance. Get rid of the guidelines because they are a jolly nuisance. Rotate 90 degrees times 3. Make a group. Go out of perspective. On top. Oh, where do we go? And bingo. Via the geometry, we have created the quad style dome with a more balanced leg. Had we gone at equidistant here, the same distance on each side, the proportion within the hexagon would be not pleasing. It would create this surface and this surface with a much more acute angle than it currently does. So we come back, we see that it's more balanced, and as I referred in the previous video, it is more akin to the second method of drawing the dome that we've been used in previous videos. So now we've got the upper part of the dome quite well structured. We may need to alter the legs, of course, because they are quite leggy. But again, I won't be altering this line or the strut. I will be lifting the base up to truncate the length of the leg. And we'll probably, very probably, simply do that by coming up 1/4 the length of this leg. That is probably, I'll probably go and do that right now, but I'll do it while paused so that we can come back and have a bit of a comparison. Okay, so I'll be back very shortly. And we're back. These should essentially be exactly the same points as seen from the plan direction orientation. This took me all of about 1 or 2 minutes. If you were looking at the time on my computer, which you see down in the bottom right hand corner, that will attest to what I was saying. So it's not difficult to do. So now we look, I'll just hide this for a moment. Make sure I'm in, here's parallel projection, and go to the front view. You can see here quite a different looking dome. We don't have that leggy dome that we have on this version here. So we've truncated it somewhat. Our length of our surface here is about 486. So it's less than, still could be quite long in proportion. There is some chance of docking this down, but is that wise? It's a good question. Not too ugly, well proportioned hexagon, quite a large top pyramid, the lid there. All in all, I think that's a success and a relief, because I did not want to proceed without having a reasonable way of drawing the dome via geometry. It is a wee bit of a fudge in some ways. I'm forcing the intersection points of the geometry to cough up a method to do that, but for the meantime I'm going to use this method if I want to compare the 3 versions of creating the dome. There's other ways of doing this, but they're really just a slight alteration of one another. I showed one where all the levels of the dome are in one plane, and that's actually quite a good way too, because it means that the pyramid, as we know, that these four lines are all level, parallel to the ground. I made it such that the other lines are parallel to the ground, so you could points of intersection, so that you can actually layer or take layers off and make sure that you can sit them straight on the ground. Is that an advantage? I think it's clumsy, because when you're creating a full size or domes of a rather than the carport pergola type structure, the bottom ones become different. They get quite small and very zigzaggy. Okay. So that's the video in the series of trying to be a little bit more succinct in creating the third version of dome that we often fall across in our attempts to understand dome structures better. Okie dokie, that's it for this one. We'll see you again later. Bye.